Decriminalization, if not legalization, seemed so close back then. The original NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, had thousands of members and a good dose of national sympathy.
What's your message then to the Prime Minister? We got the support. Have you?
NORML held huge outdoor rallies and fundraisers and made the establishment pay attention. Actually, for a while there, NORML seemed to be the establishment. Toronto lawyer Clay Ruby co-founded NORML Canada in the 70s, and he remembers the driving force.
I think it was police charging practices that arrested kids of the judges and the politicians and the lawyers and the senior executives in business. Those kids went down and mixed in a milieu, the hippie milieu, where no one could tell the rich from the poor, the powerful from the powerless, and therefore they got arrested. And the parents got very upset about that. That's no longer happening.
And, of course, the politicians paid attention. How could they not?
Les infractions relatives au cannabis.
Reform of the pot laws was set out in the 1980 speech from the throne. Soon, there was all-party agreement to decriminalize. The Liberals considered, amongst other things, reducing simple possession of pot to the equivalent of a speeding ticket. And then, suddenly, it all withered.
Drugs ripped right through the moral fiber of our countries.
The 80s arrived. So did Just Say No to Drugs. Decriminalization became inappropriate. NORML membership dried up. By 1984, Canada's marijuana lobby had vanished. Today, all that's left of NORML is packed into cardboard boxes at Canada's National Archives. A brief burst of liberalism documented in thousands of optimistic memoranda, strategy notes, reports from secret supporters inside government, and literature. Magazines like these, by the way, were legally banned in 1988.
The NORML activists did manage to put several parliamentarians on the record about their favorite subject, and to a casual reader, some of these responses are surprising. Eric Nielsen, once Deputy Prime Minister, supported decriminalization of both possession and cultivation of marijuana. John Diefenbaker did not feel that first-time offenders should even be sentenced. Ernie Manning, Preston Manning's father, supported the removal of all criminal penalties for the private possession of marijuana. There are several letters in here from Pierre Trudeau stating his intent to decriminalize, but by far the most categorical language was used by Joe Clark, both as leader of the opposition and as Prime Minister.
Simple possession of marijuana should be decriminalized, wrote Clark in 1979. If the Trudeau government believes the law is too harsh, as we do, then it should have the courage to change it. Clark went on to say that direct government sales of marijuana should be considered. And, ever the professional politician, he pondered the fat potential tax revenues. The effect on our economy of legalized sales of marijuana, he concluded, could be a healthy one. In government, Clark never got the chance to make good on that. Today, it's all just a memory.
I suppose that part of what happened is that the issue died. My letter was written in response to pressure that had been raised, questions that had been asked. We had, as you can imagine, quite a debate in our caucus, and I responded to it as leader of the opposition at the time. And we took a position that the law was not being respected and so was not effective.
It's a pity that the legislation was never passed specifically on cannabis.
Marc Lalonde was Pierre Trudeau's Justice Minister.
Some progress was made, but obviously today the possession of cannabis is still an offense under the Narcotics Act, so carrying penalties that obviously are, I think, even more today than 15 years ago, out of touch with reality. Let's hope that the judges are not applying them too often.
But they are. Just ask the machinist, or the farmer, or the school teacher. They feel society has settled back into a comfortable hypocrisy in which the crime is to get caught.
We're at a stage now where our Prime Minister will be a marijuana criminal, whether we like it or not. The fact that Kim Campbell or Jean Charest were not caught when they partook of marijuana doesn't make them any less of a cannabis criminal.
They're no different than I am, except they're in a higher up position and can get away with it better off than the small guy.
It's kind of hypocritical, eh? Throwing me in jail for something politicians are doing or admitting to doing, you know.
A few other notes. Most Canadian pot smokers now buy Canadian. Hydroponic grow labs in British Columbia and Ontario now produce the most potent pot on earth. Conviction rates are no longer kept, but simple possession is by far the most commonly laid drug charge in Canada. Nearly 17,000 people charged in 1991.
I think those who are powerful are now content with a situation where they themselves are protected. Their generation is not being prosecuted. And they don't worry about the others. There's a certain selfishness, a greediness, the stark 80s self-interest, which has marked that group which now has power.
Efforts are underway to rebuild normal Canada, but earlier this year, its new president was busted, and police seized